over 400 of these superdelegates indicated their support for Secretary Clinton before anyone else was in the race. They indicated their support for Secretary Clinton before the first ballot was cast, before the campaign even began. In other words, the establishment determined who the anointed candidate will be before the first voters got into the process.
It's the Faithless Logician, dropping what's been missing. Coming for the jugular, but not let me catch you slipping. No tool needed other than my mind to dissect these delusions and correct them in real time. The slayer of dogma and baseless assertions don't come with that weak shit or you'll soon need a surgeon. But it's too late for your argument. It's been torn and shred. There is no coming back. It is completely dead. All I need is my brain and my pen to use as I see fit to flay and or mend these inexcusable policies that are impossible to defend. All I need is my brain and my pen. No trust needed, just take a second and listen as I redirect and clear your clouded attention to focus on the facts, evidence, and testable predictions, painting a picture to help explain these insights, hypotheses, and suspect claims, giving you the tools needed to separate the truth from the false and the utterly inane. The marks are legion and too many to name, but they all love money, bathing in it with no shame, while the rest of us fight over their scraps, struggling just to maintain. They've never read a war that they would not fund, yet they treat citizens asking for health care as low-life scum. But we're done asking, so get ready, because here the we come.
Under the old rules, Democrats would divvy up the votes for their presidential nominee into two types of delegates. The bulk of the votes went to pledged delegates, people selected in state primaries who are committed to vote the same way their state did. But a handful of the delegate seats, around 15 to 20%, were reserved for party officials, governors, and members of Congress. These so-called superdelegates were free to vote for whichever nominee they felt like, regardless of what their constituents wanted.
Each state has delegates up for grabs in the primaries. People vote, and the delegates are divided up proportionally. The candidate wins the nomination if they get the most delegates. So let's take New Hampshire as an example. Bernie got 60% of the vote there, so he got 15 delegates. Hillary got 9. So Bernie won, right? Well, not quite, because here's the catch. Every state also has extra delegates called superdelegates. They are party insiders and elected leaders who can pick whichever candidate they want. They make sure the nominee isn't off message and will advance the party's interests. 6 of the New Hampshire superdelegates said they plan to support Hillary. So as of now, Bernie and Hillary are even in that state.
So basically, superdelegates are nothing but a check on democracy, specifically populist progressive politicians deemed a threat to the establishment. They are a last failsafe in case some no-good, rabble-rousing do-gooder happens to slip past the barrage of roadblocks set up to take down and or undermine any non-certified club member fully in support of the status quo. Notice the media loves to bitch and complain about the tone of Trump's tweets, though they rarely, if ever, call him on the fact that he ran as an anti-war candidate, yet has done nothing but inflate our devastatingly overbloated military budget with the help of the Dems, mind you, just as Obama and Bush before him. Superdelegates were but one of many tools used against Bernie Sanders in the 2016 Democratic primary to successfully stifle his presidential bid, enabling one of the most historically unpopular political figures and possibly the only candidate capable of losing to an unapologetic, misogynist, blatant racist game show host who can't go 5 seconds without contradicting himself. But Jay, why bring up old shit, you may be asking yourself. Superdelegates were taken care of, right?
I get a little wonky with you. So President Trump, in conspiratorial terms, he recently tweeted that the DNC has already decided to back Biden. He said, look what they did. The DNC is again working its magic in its quest to destroy crazy Bernie Sanders. I feel uncomfortable saying that to you. For the more traditional but not very bright, sleepy Joe Biden, I feel uncomfortable with that too. Here we go again, Bernie, but this time please show a little more anger and indignation when you get screwed. So he's basically saying that the DNC screwed you over last time for Hillary and is going to screw you over again. I feel like the DNC is in the tank for candidates.
Look, last time around, and this time, my campaign, talked about it with Whoopi, we are taking on the establishment. That's no great secret. We're taking on Wall Street. We're taking on the insurance companies, the drug companies. We're taking on Trump. We're taking on the Republican machine. We're also taking on the Democratic establishment. The difference, though, between this time and last time is, as you will recall, before the first vote was cast in Iowa, Secretary Clinton had 500 superdelegates lined up behind her. In other words, like it's a 100-yard race, she's on the 30-yard line. We ended that. I would go further, but right now, on the first ballot at the Democratic National Convention, no superdelegate will be voting. That's a step forward.
Yeah. Can I just follow up really quick, though? But Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard is saying she's been excluded from the DNC stage, and she actually resigned, as you know, as vice chair of the DNC last time because of your treatment. Number one, do you think that she was right? Again, I just don't know if getting rid of superdelegates is enough. And do you think it's your turn to stand up for her to be on the debate stage now?
Let me just say this. I would go further. I would ban superdelegates from voting on any ballot. We could not achieve that. We got them off the first ballot, which was a step forward.
Side note, you know you're in trouble when Meghan McCain is making the best points. Though the rule may have been changed slightly, sadly, superdelegates are not gone. Yes, they have been neutered for the first round, but they could, and if the DNC has their way, will play a huge part in deciding this year's nominee. You may have noticed that there's an awful lot of candidates running this year, and no, they're not just trying to outdo the 2016 Republican circus. The leaders of the DNC are implementing a particular strategy that's not very hard to figure out. Like I said before, and I will say again and again, the status quo, the big club that you are not a part of, the Democratic and the Republican establishments, would much, much, much rather lose to a reality show buffoon that will ultimately do their bidding than to an actual progressive willing to enact progressive policies that the majority of Americans are in favor of. Which, as Megan alluded to, is why Tulsi Gabbard was not on the last debate stage, even though she had plenty of qualifying polls, or plenty of polls that should have qualified, and why the debate stage is constantly flooded with so-called centrists to dilute any pie-in-the-sky commie talk. The DNC's hope is that at least 3 or 4 candidates make it to the convention, and none of them get a majority on the first ballot. Then, what do you know? Superdelegates to the rescue.
With all of that controversy in 2 of the major Democratic presidential primaries, why have they not been eliminated altogether?
Because when people sit down and think about it, they realize that if you want your Democratic president to be effective, you want that president to be somebody that the members of the House and the members of the Senate and the governors and the party members can work with. And that it's not just about elections, it's about governing.
Do you think the elimination of the superdelegate process would lead to a Trump on the Democratic Party side?
I think that the entire political system has become vulnerable to people like Trump, who have no business being president of the United States by virtue of experience and, more importantly, by virtue of temperament. And that we have opened ourselves up to a very dangerous situation where basically kind of charismatic people can capture a political system, even when the other actors in that system know full well that that person is not capable of being president. But it doesn't mean it won't happen to the Democrats. Okay, we now are led by a person who is unstable and not fit for office.
Well, what do you say to people who say that the Democratic Party is supposed to be better than the Republicans? They're supposed to have an more open process, and the superdelegates take away from that open process.
What the superdelegates tell you is what they think of the people running for president, and you have to listen to them for one reason. They actually know them. Okay, the voters don't actually know them. The voters can be fooled, as many Republicans were fooled by Donald Trump, and they now regret it. Okay, so you want in the process, you want somebody who actually knows the candidates and can evaluate them on the basis of their ability to govern. This is a very important office, and we are choosing somebody with no input from other people who govern.
But let me just one more pushback. Hillary Clinton got virtually all the superdelegates before people even voted, and she lost to Donald Trump. So she wasn't the superior candidate in the eyes of the American people.
But I'm not talking about superior candidates. I'm talking about people who are able to govern. And there's no doubt that she would have been able to govern. There's no doubt that her colleagues who had worked with her thought she would be able to govern. I'm talking about something different, okay?
You most certainly are. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Jana.
But I'm not talking about superior candidates. I'm talking about people who are able to govern.